UFC 310 just took place, and here we have the key fighters from UFC 310, and we're going to do some matchmaking, all right? This is Fights to Make after UFC 310. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. Before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, all that good YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want access to bonus content, you can become a channel member through the link down below this video or the join button on our channel homepage. Thank you very much. Back to the video. Okay, so here we have it. Fights to make after UFC 310. All right, there's a lot of fighters. It was a really stacked card, as you can see. We have a lot of fighters to matchmake for this video. We will start off with the flyweight champion, and still after a second round submission over Asakura, that is Alexandre Pantoja. Now, I made a video about this before the fight, that if Alexandre Pantoja beats Asakura, that the flyweight division is in a very, very rough spot, because Asakura, that would have been fresh matchups if he became champ, because he would have gotten the belt in his UFC debut. And then all of the big stars of that division, like Brandon Moreno, Kai Kara France, the more elite guys in that weight class would all have their first crack at Asakura. But that's not what happened. Alexandre Pantoja got, I think, his 9th or 10th top 10 win in the flyweight division. So we got to do something new, okay? He called out Demetrius Johnson, arguably the GOAT. To me, the second best fighter of all time behind GSP, that don't use steroids. And here's what you got to do. He called out Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson said, no, I'm not interested. But there's another former flyweight champion that's still in the UFC, and I think this is a very interesting matchup if he can make the cut back to 125 pounds, because I think any shot of making it to a title at 135 is cooked right now. That's Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo back down to 125. Henry Cejudo back down to 125. That's what I think. It's a fun fight, fun matchup, very interesting. Henry Cejudo's way undersized for 135, and his only 2 losses at 135 since returning to the UFC is the former champion Aljamain Sterling, who's now a 45er, so he was a big bantamweight, and Merab Dvalishvili, who's now the current champion. So that's what I think you do. It's fun. It can headline a pay-per-view, and it's fun. I think Triple C's like one of the few people in that 125-pound division, if he moves down, that actually gets a little bit of eyes on him. So that's what I think you do. We move on from there to the winner of the co-main event. Shavkat Rakhmonov beat Ian Machado Garry by decision. Despite coming into the fight with a torn MCL, he wins. Not the most exciting fight from Shavkat, but given the injury, it kind of makes sense. So Shavkat, he already was booked against Belal Muhammad, the welterweight champion. Now that he gets a win against a top contender with an injury too, plan doesn't change. Belal's training again. They did a face-off in the ring. Really not much to say here. I think Shavkat is actually going to smoke Belal when they fight, but there's no doubt that this is the next fight for the welterweight title. Moving on from there, we have Ciryl Gane, who won a very, very controversial split decision over Alexander Volkov. If you watch the video I put out last night about the video, you'll see there's a little bit of weirdness about the judge, Adelaide Bird, and such, but Ciryl Gane gets the win regardless. And here's what I think you do. There's 2 options, and they revolve around what happens with Aspinall Jones, okay? If Tom Aspinall and John Jones do not fight, you do Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane, undisputed heavyweight championship. John Jones rides off into retirement. If they find a way, if they cut John Jones that check and he fights Tom Aspinall, then you have to rematch Ciryl Gane and Alexander Volkov in the meantime to decide who fights the winner of Tom and Jones. So depending on where the UFC goes, if they can book Aspinall Jones, you either have Ciryl Gane fight Tom Aspinall next, even though it's a weak win, he's still coming off of a win. You have Ciryl Gane fight Tom Aspinall for the undisputed belt, because John Jones would have been retired by then if they don't do Aspinall versus Jones. If they do Aspinall versus Jones, rematch Volkov and Gane, winner fights the winner of Tom and John. Good stuff to me. I mean, Ciryl Gane had moments in the fight. He lost the fight for sure, in my opinion. He should have lost that fight. But he had moments. That's who they want. Look, he's athletic. He's an exciting striker for a heavyweight. They already have him as the face of French MMA. He's a very big star over there. He's like a model and an actor and all these different things on top of being a fighter. This is who they want in a title fight, okay? That's what they're going to do unless Tom and John happens. You have him fight Volkov again. We move on from there to Brian Battle, who won a very, very controversial split decision on the prelims. He missed weight by nearly 5 pounds, and many people thought that Randy Brown beat him anyway. I mean, guys, the judging was terrible on this card, but I thought Randy Brown won that fight. But Brian Battle wins. Now, he still is working towards the top 15, but after missing weight and a controversial decision win, you don't give him a top 15 guy yet. You have him fight somebody that used to be ranked, is a fringe ranking guy coming off of a win on the same card, Michael Chiesa. Perfect matchup, in my opinion. You have them fight Seattle. Michael Chiesa called for Seattle in February. The main event is already, I think, going to be Fluffy Hernandez and Brendan Allen, a middleweight main event. Brian Battle and Michael Chiesa are both unranked, but they're both fringe ranking guys, and UFC matchmaking in 2025, 2024, Brian Battle, Michael Chiesa is a fight night co-main event all day long. So I think that actually makes sense. Brian Battle, Michael Chiesa in Seattle, co-main event to Brendan Allen and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. That sounds like a cool fight to me. Winner gets a ranked opponent, because I guess Michael Chiesa is not done fighting yet, as he said. We move on to the loser of the main event. Former Rizin champion came over and honestly got smoked by Pantoja, Kai Asakura. Now, part of me thinks he's never going to fight in the UFC again. The UFC belt was goal chasing. He already had money and fame over in Japan through YouTube and fighting in Rizin. He's a big star. He has YouTube videos with over 20 million views. He was a champion twice in Rizin. I'm sure he's made a bunch of money. This was goal chasing. I think you have to entice him with something to keep him around. I don't think they can just go like, here's Tim Elliott or something like that, or here's a Matt Schnell and he'll stick around. I don't think that's what happens. I think what you have to do, you still try to break into the Japanese market, because the plan was, in my opinion, the UFC's plan was originally Tatsuro Taira beats Brandon Royval, Kai Asakura beats Pantoja. You do 2 Japanese fighters fighting for the flyweight belt in a Japan pay-per-view main event. I talked about it a bunch of times on this channel. That, as far as a title fight, is gone because they both lost. Royval beat Taira, Pantoja beat Asakura. But so what I think you do instead of that is the same fight, but a fight night main event in Japan. You still break into the Japanese market with a big Japanese star in Kai Asakura and a rising Japanese star who's highly ranked in Tatsuro Taira. I think you still do that fight night main event in Japan. Sounds super fun to me. Winner gets a title shot. Cool with me. And I think that there's a lot here, because Kai Asakura could become an immediate star and potentially fight for the belt again. Or Taira, he's young. It's kind of like a win-win. If Taira loses another fight, it's okay. You know, he just lost his very first fight to Brandon Royval. He could lose this next one, and he's like 15-2, and he's like 23 years old, so he's fine. Moving on from there, we have the loser of the co-main event. That's Ian Machado Garry. Honestly, as much hate as he gets in the community, as annoying as he is at times, as cringe as he is to me, he looked really good. He made Shavkat look human, amongst other things. It was a great performance, and even though he's ranked 7th and coming off of a loss, he is the only person that's given Shavkat a hard time, really, and he almost submitted Shavkat. I think you have to have Ian Garry fight up in the rankings. I know there is a UFC main event in London for a fight night that needs to be filled. As of right now, the co-main event, I think, is Jan Blachowicz and Carlos Ulberg. That's already announced. I think that's like a main event type of fight. They're talking about Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady in that card, or on that card, and I hate that idea. I think you do Europe versus Europe, Ireland versus England. You do Ian Garry versus Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards probably doesn't want to deal with another heavy pressure wrestler. He did Usman, and then he did Usman again, and then he did Colby Covington, and then he did Belal Muhammad. You entice Leon Edwards with a main event matchup against a striker, and I think that this is a really fun fight. Potential to be very boring. If you don't do this fight, you do Ian Garry versus Wonderboy. I think that sounds like a fight night main event as well. But this is the fight that I want to see, is Ian Garry versus Leon, fight night main event, because Paddy versus Moicano is not going to happen. Moicano just got announced to be fighting Beneil Dariush at UFC 311 in January. So I think you do Ian Garry Leon. Moving on from there, Alexander Volkov robbed of a decision against Ciryl Gane. Personally, I think there's only, like I mentioned with Ciryl Gane, there is some things regarding the heavyweight championship, Tom Aspinall, John Jones, that will decide what happens next for Ciryl Gane. If you're Alexander Volkov, I am pursuing a Ciryl Gane rematch all the way. If I'm him, I say, I won that fight. Give me this same guy again. I beat him, title shot. I'll prove for a second time now that I'm better than him. Because Ciryl Gane won their first fight, but Volkov seems to have improved much more than Ciryl Gane in that time. I think you run this fight back, but then again, it's all contingent on the things I mentioned about Tom Aspinall and John Jones and if they fight. We move on from there. Early prelim winner, Chase Hooper, performance of the night bonus. He armbarred Clay Guida. Clay Guida is still a very tough competitor despite being 60 plus fights into his career, being 40 plus years old, and Chase Hooper absolutely smoked him. He looked really good. Chase Hooper, not 20 years old anymore in his still like semi-teenager body. He's nearly 25, 26 now, and he's got more frame on him, moved up a weight class. I think he's legit at 155. I think you give him a win against another fringe ranking up-and-coming guy. Fight of the night, I'm pretty sure it was, on the Sphere card. He beat Daniel Zellhuber. You do Chase Hooper against Esteban Ribovics, and the winner gets a ranked opponent. In my opinion, I think these guys are fringe ranking guys. I think if there was like longer rankings, these guys are probably somewhere between that 15 and 25 range, just outside of the rankings. So I think you have them fight each other. Ribovics just fought 3 months ago, and it was a tough fight. So, he has some time off. Chase Hooper got a first round finish. Yeah, I think you do this because Chase Hooper got a first round finish, didn't take much damage. You have them fight like maybe the Miami card. That makes sense. The Latin culture in Miami, Ribovics is Argentinian. That makes perfect sense for like prelims of the April Miami card. That sounds good to me. Moving on from there, thank you to Bryce Mitchell for finally ridding the UFC of Kron Gracie. There's no way he's still on the roster after this. He pulled guard in every single round, Kron Gracie that is. Frustrating fight to watch, and finally in the third round, Bryce Mitchell made him pay. Got the win. I think you have him fight somebody that got a win on the same card. Doo Ho Choi beat Nate the Train, cooked Nate the Train, called out Bryce Mitchell, and Bryce Mitchell accepted. Same card. Bryce Mitchell got a good finish. Doo Ho Choi had a fantastic performance. Neither one of them took a bunch of damage. Both of them had relatively competitively dominant performances, I'll say. They didn't absolutely cook their opponent, but they were ahead by a lot and they didn't take much damage. Same thing, put them on a, this screams like fight night, Apex fight night main event to me, as a Mitchell versus Doo Ho Choi, given that Choi was previously ranked. He has clout because of his ties to Korean Zombie. Bryce Mitchell's a big name. They've had him fight in the Apex before. This has Apex main event written all over it to me. So that's what I think you do next. We move on from there to Dominic Reyes with a win over a very emotional and compromised Anthony Lionheart Smith, but he absolutely smoked him. Dom Reyes beat John Jones in a lot of people's eyes, and I don't think you play around. He's got 2 wins. I think you throw him right up there to the top of the division. I think you have him go up against somebody who's coming off of 2 losses. Dom Reyes has 2 wins. This guy's coming off 2 losses in a row this year. I think you have him jump way up in the rankings. Let's just see where Dom Reyes is at, because he's either cooked or he's back, and we can start talking about a title shot. Alexander Rakic. I was going to say Khalil Roundtree, but Khalil Roundtree took a lot of damage against Pereira. Probably got paid a lot for that title fight. He'll probably be out for a while. And I think if you're the UFC, you go Dom Reyes, you have all this lore of you almost beating John Jones. Let's get you back towards the title. Rakic, you're coming off 2 losses. We're going to have you fight this guy. And he's way down in the rankings, but he's a big name, former title challenger, back-to-back finish wins. This has Apex main event written all over it, or even crowded fight night main event, because you have a top 5 guy against Dom Reyes. That actually could be a crowded main event for a fight night. So fight night main event, Dom Reyes, Alexander Rakic. Maybe that fight doesn't need to be a 5-round fight. I could see it on the main card of a pay-per-view, but Dom Reyes, Alexander Rakic, first quarter, of first quarter of next year. Rakic fought on the Holloway Topuria card just about a month and a half ago. Dom Reyes just fought. Really didn't take much damage. He really put a bad beating on Anthony Lionheart Smith. I could see this on the Miami card in April. I could see this on Las Vegas in March. I could see it on Las Vegas in July. That's a little bit further out though. Apex main event, something like that. I think in the next 4 months. I think you do it by April. Moving on from there, Movsar Evloev. Look, he's not going to get a title shot off that performance, even though he beat a former champion. I think what you do, you rematch him with Diego Lopez. Ilia Topuria talked about going up to 155. That's not going to happen. He's going to stay at 45. I think they're going to do him and Volk as the Miami card main event in April. I think Spain is a little too far out for right now. I don't think Topuria's next fight's in Spain. I think it's the one after this is going to be in Spain because they probably don't want to hold Topuria out until late next year. So Movsar versus Diego Lopez, maybe even put it on the same card, on that Miami card. Do Topuria, Volk main event, Movsar, Diego Lopes main card. That's like a contingency fight because if somebody pulls out of the main event, you plug Diego Lopez or Movsar into the main event. Hopefully Diego Lopez, if needed. And look, I'm like building the Miami card right here. You could do this for your Miami card. You could have Topuria Volk main event. You could have a co-main event of Pantoja Cejudo. That kind of makes sense. It just sounds fun. Pantoja trains in Florida. Yeah, Topuria, Volk main event, Pantoja Cejudo co-main, or Pantoja title defense co-main, main card fight, Movsar, Diego Lopez, main card fight, Dom Reyes Rakic. That's a sick card. And then main card fight or prelim headliner, Chase Hooper, Esteban Ribovics. And yeah, that's fun to me. I don't think Movsar deserves a title shot yet. And so I think you do this. I think you settle this. Diego Lopez took the fight on like 5 days notice, took Movsar to a split decision. That makes sense. Moving on. Josh Van looked super crispy against Cody Durden. I mentioned in my recap of the card that he's very undersized for the weight class, but I still think that he can beat like top 15 guys, top 10 guys. I don't think Josh Van's a future champ, but he called out Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott accepted. I think that's what you do. That makes a lot of sense. So to recap, Pantoja Cejudo sounds fun to me. Belal and Shavkat, that's the obvious one. Ciryl Gane's next fight depends on if John Jones and Tom Aspinall fight. It's going to be Tom or Volkov, in my opinion. Brian Battle, Michael Chiesa, co-main event of UFC Seattle in February. Tatsuro Taira and Kai Asakura, Japan fight night main event. Ian Machado Garry, Leon Edwards, main event of London on March 22nd. Volkov versus Ciryl Gane, that makes sense, but again, that's contingent on Aspinall Jones not happening. And then Chase Hooper, Esteban Ribovics in Miami in April. Bryce Mitchell, Doo-Ho Choi, that's like an Apex main event. Dom Reyes, Rakic, Apex main event or fight night or a pay-per-view main card. Miami maybe in April. Movsar, Diego Lopez, Miami card, whatever the same card as Volk and Topuria is going to be on. And then Josh Van versus Tim Elliott. I like these matchups a lot, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm Wyatt. This is Fight Society. Thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want access to bonus content, become a channel member today by clicking the join button on our channel homepage or the link down below this video. If you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, go check out my podcast, What's Up Bro, with Wyatt and Bo, in the link down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.